My name is Kadishi Olise, and I'm a doctoral candidate at the University at History Department, University of Ibadan. I'm also a volunteer researcher at Women Research and Documentation Center, Ibadan. And then I own a history and development website, which is NogView, which I've mentioned. So today I'm looking at women's rights and challenges of insecurity in Nigeria. And the aim of this discourse is just to show how insecurity has affected women's rights. So I'll be sharing my PowerPoint slides with everybody so that you can join me through the presentation, okay? Okay, so yeah. So over the years, women have been faced with difficult struggles, and with the presence of insecurity and conflict, more threats have risen against their well-being and rights. Okay, so the aim of this study is just to disclose how insecurity has affected women's rights. The study will adopt the use of historical approach. The study would make use and adopt the use of historical approach in the gathering and interpretation of data. Now, this historical approach includes usage of both primary and secondary sources, books, journals, to mention a few. So the study aims to bring into limelight the challenges of women and challenges in the light of insecurity faced by women, okay? And it will go further to discuss the different forms of insecurity in Nigeria, the causes of insecurity in Nigeria, and how this insecurity has affected women's rights, okay? So I made mention that the presence of insecurity is evident around the world. The presence of insecurity is evident around the world and is making it a global phenomenon, okay? So attempts have been made to tackle the causes of insecurity as they affect humanity as a whole, the society, human rights, and development. That is to say that insecurity is not only present in Nigeria, it's present around the whole world, okay? And it has affected humans generally, not only women. But my main focus today will be on women and women's rights, okay? And it has made manifest in conflicts, violence, kidnappings, crimes, killings, to mention a few. Now, in relation to Nigeria now, there are major insecurity levels and insecurity locations that we would focus on. There are the records of agitation in the Niger Delta for resource control. There are known communal crises in different areas of Nigeria and different states. An example is the Ife Modakeke crisis, the Boko Haram insurgencies, the Fulani herdsmen, which is apparent, to mention a few. So now with regards to these crises that have been mentioned, it's important that these perpetrators or the people that carry out these activities that have brought about insecurity should be discussed, okay? So my work has been divided into 7 sections. And the first I will take is the conceptual clarification. And the second is historicizing women's rent from global perspective and its presence in Nigeria, the states of insecurity in Nigeria, the causes of insecurity in Nigeria, the effect of insecurity in Nigeria, women's rights, and Nigeria insecurity. And then after looking at all this, it's important that we should look at the possible solutions, possible panacea, and then I will conclude. Okay, so in defining the concept, I said the term women's rights have been defined to be human right that applies to women. Now, it's best that to best explain women's rights, we have to look at what human right is. The human right is perceived as an entailment to treatment that a person enjoys simply by virtue of being a human. And this is according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDH, of 1948. Now, this 1948 Human Rights Declaration comprises of a preamble of 30 articles. Now, these 30 articles talked about the list of rights that a human should have, such as right to liberty, right to live, right to security, right to love, prohibition of slavery, right to free and fair trial, presumption of innocence until proven guilty, prohibition of retroactive law, to mention a few, Then we have freedom of movement, which includes immigration, rights to asylum in another country. For example, if there's a problem in Nigeria and a woman needs to seek, not a woman, human generally needs to seek asylum in another country, everybody have a right to seek that asylum. Okay. So having mentioned some of these human rights according to the United Nations, Human Rights of 1948, it's important for us to now pinpoint it to women's rights, okay? So women's rights therefore entails the general rights applicable to women. This right includes the right to life, right to personal liberty, right to choose, right to marriage, right of freedom of choice of employment. So as a woman, we have rights to choose where we want to work, right to live our lives, right to choose the religion that we want to practice, like every other human, okay? So in this paper, women's rights is perceived to be the advocates and laws that cover and respond to the realities of women's life. And this can be considered to focus on women's issue and gender injustice. So to summarize this conceptualization of women's rights, I would say that women's rights is an integral part of human rights, and it should not be overlooked. Okay, the second concept I would explain is insecurity. Now, the concept of insecurity has been defined by different scholars, and I believe that for us to understand what insecurity means, we have to understand what security means. And insecurity is apparent everywhere, like I've said before. So security simply means a space or a presence of freedom and absence of dangerous tendencies that could undermine internal cohesion and corporate existence of nature. Now, that being said, we can say insecurity can be said to be the absence of peaceful area and the occurrence of danger and no security. Okay, so with the presence of insecurity, humans have been faced with danger, and women too have been faced with danger. So over time, the conceptualization of insecurity have varied. For example, during the Cold War, insecurity was conceived to be the recognition of threat to the state. You know, during the Cold War, there was different proxy wars. There was threat of armed race, nuclear weapon. So during the Cold War, basically, what insecurity meant there was just a threat to states. So after the Cold War, which is the post-Cold War period, from 1990s and 1993, insecurity has been referred to the presence of any situation that causes fear, instigates harm, and causes a situation whereby there's social, economic, and political strategic political instability, insurgency, poverty, disease, unemployment, lack of access to education, to mention a few. So now we're going to tie this post-Cold War conceptualization to the present challenges of women's rights. So I would say women's rights is faced by insecurity when a woman is scared. She's scared. When a woman is scared that somebody is going to instigate harm to her, is scared when there's political stability and there's insurgency. So in relation to my presentation today, insecurity simply just means any situation or a state of things that is antithesis to a safe situation or security. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide, which says women's rights from global perspective. The reason why I'm going to show women's rights from global perspective is that I want us to take into cognizance that women's rights is not a new phenomenon, and that women's rights has been practiced all over the world and has been recognized all over the world, despite the challenges, okay? So I said since the end of the Second World War, the concerns of women's rights began to assume a wider spread, meaning that after the Second World War, 1945, the concern of women's rights began to assume a wider spread, and it became more recognized. For example, the 1945 Charter made it possible for women to have a platform, okay? So Then we have the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights. Now, women's rights activists believe that rights of women were neglected and their status was still on a low global scale. Like when women's rights in the presence of insecurity and in the presence of a global scale, women's rights activists and women generally perceived that women's rights were being neglected. And this led to different deliberate action by different women and women associations and women activists to improve women's status far and wide. Now, this led to a series of movements, because of the need to elevate women's status, the need to make sure women are protected. Different conferences have been held. For example, in the mid-1970s to 1980s, now women rights have been promoted from every angle. And this has led to different conferences in Mexico. Yeah, and there's the second women conference in Copenhagen, that's in 1980. Then one of the important women rights promotion and something to be recognized is the CEDAW, which was adopted in 1979. Now, the CEDAW means the Convention for the Elevation of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Now, the CEDAW basically just covers three principles, which has been broken down to several parts. The three principles includes obligation to respect equality in law and policies. This means that women and women's rights generally should be respected, and that women should be treated equally under the law and in respect to policies. The second is obligation to protect women and to avoid non-discrimination, meaning that women should not be discriminated and then women should be protected. Then the third is obligation to fulfill and uphold equality and eliminate gender discrimination. Now, whether we like it or not, there's the presence of gender discrimination around the world, in Nigeria, and even in our little society. So there's a need for, and there's an obligation for women activists, for humans generally, both men and women, to uphold and fulfill and eliminate gender discrimination. So in CEDAW, basically what they discussed is justice, childcare, health, women's education. That's the need for women to be educated, girl child to be educated. There's a need for political participation, and there's a need to enhance the situation of rural women. Then another important global event that's happened to promote women's rights is the Declaration of Elimination of Violence Against Women, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1993. And one of the major conferences that have been recognized in women history in the struggle for women's rights and development is the Beijing Conference of 1995, which is recognized as the Fourth World Conference of Women in Beijing. Now, I've given a global perspective on women's rights and different conferences and different conferences that have been held. Now, I'm going to bring it down to Nigeria. So Nigeria's attempt towards achieving human rights, like I said, Nigeria, like I said, women's rights is recognized globally, and it comes down to different countries around the world. So my focus is Nigeria. Nigeria is not left out in the pursuit of achieving women's rights. And in the bid to achieve women's rights, Nigeria has ratified different acts or documents for different conferences. And the first is CEDAW, which I've discussed in where I talked about the three principles of CEDAW, and now it has focused on childcare, justice, duty of the state to cover women's protection, education, discrimination, to mention a few. So Nigeria ratified the CEDAW in 1985, and Nigeria is still trying to implement all the policies because Nigeria's implementation has been faced with different challenges. Okay, then the second Second attempt towards achieving human rights that Nigeria has carried out is the Maputo Protocol that was put into effect in 2005. Now, this Maputo Protocol simply means, or rather, this Maputo Protocol is a protocol that covers the human rights and people's rights of women in Africa. It's the protocol to the African Charter of Human Rights and People's Rights on the rights of women in Africa. So it was drafted in 1995 and it was signed in July 2003 and it became effective in 2005. So this protocol simply covers the elimination of harmful practices, covers marriage and divorce, inheritance, that's things that women go through, access to justice and equal protection before the law, right to participate in political and decision-making process, right to peace. Then why this is important to women's rights and insecurity is because a part of the protocol covers protection of women in armed conflict, meaning that this protocol covers how women should be protected during armed conflict.